Here's a strange contradiction psychologists have studied for decades. A man can hold a room, talk to strangers, present in front of coworkers without flinching, and then completely lock up the moment he's talking to someone he's actually attracted to. It looks like confidence just vanished. The research says something more specific is happening. Attraction, self-monitoring, and fear of rejection colliding in the same 30 seconds. 5 documented psychological mechanisms explain exactly why. Let's go through them. Number 1. They become hyper-aware of themselves. Psychologists Ronald Rapee and Richard Heimberg built a widely cited cognitive model of social anxiety in 1997, centered on something they called self-focused attention. Their research found that in situations that feel evaluative, like talking to someone you're attracted to, attention splits. Part of it stays on the conversation, part of it turns inward, monitoring tone, posture, timing, whether that joke landed. The problem is that these two channels compete for the same limited resource. The more attention gets pulled inward, the less is available for the actual interaction, which is exactly when conversation starts to feel like a performance instead of a conversation. 2. They fear being judged. In 1969, psychologists David Watson and Ronald Friend introduced a concept that's since become foundational in anxiety research: fear of negative evaluation, a specific, measurable worry about being judged unfavorably by others. Their research showed this fear doesn't require anything bad to have actually happened yet. The anticipation alone is enough to trigger avoidance, going quiet, downplaying interest, saying less rather than risking the wrong thing. Attraction raises the stakes of that evaluation. A stranger's opinion barely registers. Someone you're drawn to has been mentally flagged as a judge who actually matters, and the nervous system responds accordingly. 3. They overthink every interaction. Psychologists David Clark and Adrian Wells studied a phenomenon they named post-event processing, the tendency, after a socially significant interaction, to mentally replay it in detail, usually zeroing in on whatever felt most awkward or uncertain. Their 1995 model of social anxiety found that this replay isn't neutral. It tends to distort the memory negatively, making the interaction seem worse in hindsight than it actually was. That replay loop doesn't stay confined to after the fact either. Anticipating it in advance is often what causes the hesitation in the moment. The search for the right thing to say can end up crowded without saying anything at all. 4. They need time to feel safe. In 1968, psychologist Robert Zajonc documented something now called the mere exposure effect, the finding that repeated, low-stakes exposure to someone increases comfort and liking, independent of anything that person says or does differently. Applied here, the version of a man that shows up in the first 5 minutes with someone he's attracted to often isn't the calibrated version. Familiarity does something chemistry alone can't. It lowers the perceived stakes of each individual interaction, which is exactly what self-focused attention and fear of evaluation feed on. Quietness early on isn't a fixed trait. Zajonc's research suggests it's often just a timeline. 5. Attraction makes rejection feel more personal. Psychologist Sandra Murray's research, known as risk regulation theory, looked directly at this trade-off. In close relationships, people are constantly weighing the desire for connection against the risk of rejection and adjusting their behavior to manage that risk. Her findings showed that self-protective strategies, holding back, waiting for signs, avoiding the first move, genuinely do reduce the immediate risk of rejection. They also reliably reduce the odds of the connection happening at all. That's the trade Murray's research keeps surfacing. The safest move and the effective move are rarely the same one. Which is exactly why the man who seems least interested is sometimes running the most internal risk calculation of anyone in the room. Final thoughts. Shyness around someone you're attracted to isn't a confidence problem. The research points somewhere more specific. Attention pulled inward. A judgment that suddenly feels consequential. A replay loop running before the interaction even ends. Comfort still waiting to build, and a very real risk calculation happening in real time. None of that is a lack of interest. If anything, it's the opposite. Proof the stakes registered as real. The confident man who goes quiet hasn't lost anything. He's just running 5 well-documented psychological processes at once, all triggered by something mattering more than usual. If you're into the psychology behind attraction, social anxiety, and the hidden mechanics of human behavior, subscribe. Because here, we don't just describe behavior, we trace it back to the research.